Okay, so chapter 33. Let's refresh our memories a little bit. Okay, before the last chapter was about Avas Yisrael, loving a fellow Jew by focusing on where our souls come from, the fact that we have one father, we come from the same source. That chapter came about because we were discussing the Benoni beginning to identify with his godly soul. In other words, beginning to detach himself from his identity, personality of the animal soul, and he's beginning to identify with his godly soul. And the Alter Rebbe interrupted this in the middle by using this godly soul and explaining thereby how we could actually love each other as we love ourselves. Now, why did the Benoni begin identifying with his godly soul? He began doing this as an antidote to depression, which might come about as a result of contemplating his spiritual failings. If you remember correctly, we had even begun discussing the concept of Timtum Halev, a blockage of the heart, and various techniques how to overcome Timtum Halev. But the Alter Rebbe alerted us to the fact that this has a potential side effect, the potential side effect being sadness over one's spiritual state and failings. And the Alter Rebbe began explaining to us how we can avoid this. Now, the ways up till now, how the Alter Rebbe explained, avoiding the sadness that can come about as a result of contemplating one's spiritual failings, is remembering, firstly, that there is also a godly soul, that you are not your animal soul. That is not your identity. You begin identifying more with your godly soul. And going even deeper, the Alter Rebbe began explaining how actually one can even elevate the animal soul, and that is actually a reason for happiness and joy, because one is liberating the godly soul from the animal soul, training the animal soul to love God, etc., and elevating the animal soul. Now here, in this chapter, the Alter Rebbe resumes speaking about this potential sadness that can come about as a result of contemplating one's spiritual failings. And this whole chapter is devoted to an antidote for this. This whole chapter is a technique for discovering real joy, which will counteract the potential sadness one can feel as a result of contemplating one's failings. And let's remember that when one does contemplate one's failings, it's not meant to be done the whole day, because that comes from the Yetzer Hara. It has to be done at given times, etc., etc. Now, before we actually go into this chapter, what I do want to say about this chapter is that this chapter contains within it 2 of the 12 psukim. Now, I'm sure you're all familiar with the fact that there are 12 Torah verses that the Rebbe chose that are very, very fundamental beliefs in Yiddishkeit, and they are part of what we teach children, the very first things that we teach children at all the Rebbe's rallies that the Rebbe used to speak to children. They would, repeat these verses. The child would get up on a stage and say, Torah, and everyone would repeat afterwards, Torah, Tziva, Tziva, etc. I myself had the schus of saying a pasuk. Actually, Panina might remember it because it was probably my first trip to New York when I met some Beis Rivka girls, and they kind of pushed me up to say a pasuk Kikarev. That was when I first met Panina. But what's interesting about this chapter is that there are 2 psukim. 2 of those psukim are in this chapter. So as we get to the point in the chapter where the pasuk is, we will say that pasuk. I will tell you which pasuk it is, and it's really, really fundamental beliefs in Yiddishkeit which are in this chapter. Now, in order to attain or reach a state of true happiness and joy, even when a person sees in himself certain things which need improvement, For example, we mentioned Timtum Halev, a blockage of the heart, or certain other spiritual failings. What does the Alter Rebbe tell us to do in this chapter? The Alter Rebbe tells us that a person should contemplate, think deeply in his mind, picture in his mind. He actually uses the verbiage picture in his mind the truth about Hashem's unity. Now, Hashem's unity, when we say in Shema, we say Shema Yisrael Hashem Elokeinu Hashem Echad. Hashem is one. That is Hashem's unity. Many people err by saying that Hashem's unity means that Hashem is one. In other words, that there's not two gods, there's one God. But in actual fact, Hashem's unity does not mean necessarily that Hashem is one, that there's only one God, but that there is nothing else besides Hashem. In other words, Ein Oid Milvadoi. There is nothing else besides Hashem. And meditating on this, reflecting on this, and picturing in one's mind how there is nothing else besides Hashem, and the Alter Rebbe will give us techniques that we will explain now how to do this, one reaches a state of true happiness and joy. Because, when we talk about true happiness and joy, when we feel happiness and joy, according to our limited expectations, many times, firstly, it's not really happiness that we're feeling, but pleasure. There's a difference between happiness and pleasure. And also, true happiness comes from Hashem. We may be feeling happy about something, even deriving pleasure or whatever it is, and we may be feeling happiness, but it may not last. It may not be true. So the Alter Rebbe tells us in this chapter, if you want to attain true happiness and joy, you have to reflect upon Hashem's unity, Hashem's oneness, that nothing else exists besides Hashem. Now, this subject is actually discussed at length elsewhere in Tanya, especially in the second part of Tanya, Shar HaYichud VeEmunah, which is basically the gates of unity and faith. But this chapter does touch upon it, giving us certain techniques to reflect upon and to remember, and with the intention of being able to bring about true happiness. So how does one go about this? So firstly, the Alter Rebbe tells us to think and reflect on the fact that Hashem is memale kol almin. He fills all the worlds. What does it mean that he fills all the worlds? The whole entire world is dependent on Hashem, and Hashem gives life to the whole entire world. But Hashem gives every creation exactly what it needs to exist, tailored to each and every single creation. And that actually is different in each creation. It is different in the superior worlds and the inferior worlds, because we know that this world that we live in is but one of the four worlds that Hashem created. And the higher the world, the greater revelation of Hashem. The lower the world, the lesser revelation there is of Hashem. And in addition to that, the amount of life and the type of life, the type of vitality Hashem gives is tailored to each creation specifically, each organ specifically in the creations. And there is a difference how Hashem expresses himself in the creations according to the level of filling the world. Mamale kol almin. And then contemplating further, one remembers that Hashem is not only mamale kol almin. Hashem doesn't only fill this world, but Hashem is also sovev kol almin. Hashem surrounds this world. Hashem encompasses the world. And on this level, Hashem is equal towards all creation, because Hashem is not limited by the creations, but Hashem's glory is revealed through this level, which is also actually explained at far greater length later on in Tanya, especially the last prakim of Likutei Amarim, really explain how the fact that Hashem's encompassing this world does not mean that Hashem is far from this world. On the contrary, Hashem is very close to this world, but it's on a level of encompassing and is therefore equal according to all creations. But these are two lower level thinking of Hashem, lower level expressions of Hashem, but there is a level in this chapter which we come to contemplate and reflect upon, where Nothing else exists besides Hashem. Hashem is so to speak alone in the world in exactly the same manner as he was alone in the world before creation, and there is no change in Hashem. Now later on in Tanya and Shara Yichud Ve'amunah, the Alter Rebbe explains how this in really tremendous detail. But here, the Alter Rebbe gives us two examples to understand it a little bit. And even when we talk later on in Shara Yichud Ve'amunah, the Alter Rebbe explains that whatever he is explaining is just so that we reach a certain level of faith, which is beyond logic. In other words, we try to understand what we can understand, and the rest is faith. The rest is emunah, because emunah is beyond, above reasoning, above intellect. So how do we understand what we can, and then we realize that we really don't understand how this can be. And that brings us to the level of true faith in Hashem's unity. So in this chapter, the Alter Rebbe gives us two examples. What are the two examples to understand the concept that nothing else exists besides Hashem? How do we wrap our heads around this? How do we understand this in this chapter? So the first example that the Alter Rebbe gives us is by thinking about the fact that thought and speech, there is a level that they exist in their source, which their source is the 10 powers of the soul, right? Every soul has 10 attributes or powers. At that level, there is no thought or speech. In other words, you can feel love or fear or hate or anger or any of the emotions that one can feel without actually having thought them out or expressed them in words. And therefore, you can go to any country in the world and you don't have to speak the language, but you will know if a person is happy, sad, angry, in love, hates another person, etc., etc. Because there is a level before thought and speech expresses itself in words and in feelings and in definitions, where it's absorbed into the power of the soul. It's one with the powers of the soul. In other words, it's non-existent. You can't describe it with words. It's that millisecond before you say, oh, I'm so angry. You feel it in your body. Or you're on cloud nine, you're so happy, but you haven't actually given expression. That moment before giving expression to your thoughts and feelings, your thoughts and feelings are absorbed within their source. They don't have expression, but yet they exist. They exist and don't exist at the same time. So with Hashem, and we know that Hashem created the world with words, right? Hashem said, let there be light, and there was light. Let there be a firmament, and there was a firmament, etc. As we learn in Parshas Bereshis, when Hashem created the world. When a person speaks, right, there is a moment before you speak that the thoughts are within you and you haven't expressed them. Let's say you're going to say something and then you control yourself and you don't say it. So you swallow your words, right? Your words now are one with you. On the other hand, when you speak and you give expression to your thoughts, your words leave you and you can actually never get them back. They separate from you. But with Hashem, it's different. Hashem creates the world with speech, but on the level of someone who hasn't actually spoken. So therefore, his words and his speech and his creations are not something separate from him. They are one with him. They are one at the source. Much like, this is the first example the Alter Rebbe gives in this chapter, much like in how in the 10 powers of the soul, there are no letters or images. No letters or images exist before that knowledge has been clothed in images and letters, and then you start thinking and saying and talking. I hope that explanation is clear. No, Sina is shaking her head. It's not clear. Okay, so we're going to give the second example, Sina, and we're going to go back to the first example to see if we understand the first example. The second example that the Alter Rebbe gives in this chapter is that of light as it exists within the sun. Now, we know that what we see outside when we say, oh, it's such a sunny day, or when it's light outside because it's daytime, those are only the rays of the sun. It's not the sun itself, correct? The sun itself, we can't see. We would be blinded by looking at the sun itself, right? But those rays of the sun come from the sun, right? They are within the sun. They are within the sun. And when those rays are in the sun, they are nullified. They are as if they are non-existent. Now, we can't say that they don't exist. They are in the sun, right? They start off from the sun. They're in the sun, but it's as if they're non-existent because it's like a candle in the sunlight. The Gemara uses this expression, like a candle in the sunlight. The candle is no less luminous during the daytime, but it is overwhelmed by a far greater light and ceases to exist as a luminary. It loses its identity. It's not anymore a light-giving system. If you light a candle in the day, okay, there's a little flame, but it doesn't do anything. If you light a candle during the dark time of the day, the night, that gives light. It has an identity. But the rays of the sun also have light. When they're away from the sun, we can see that they give light. They have an identity as luminaries. But when those same rays are in the sun, they're absorbed into their source. They don't have an identity. They're nullified, and it's as if they don't exist. Okay, so going back to the first example, right? When you have a feeling, the feeling is about to give expression to thoughts and speech even, but the moment that the feeling starts off, it's as if it doesn't exist because it's within its source. So it exists and doesn't exist at the same time. It exists, but it has no identity. It's nullified. The rays of the sun in the sun exist, but have no identity. They're nullified. Creation is nullified. The world is nullified because creation is always connected and within its source, Hashem. So it's like we exist, and yes, Shara Yuchad Ve'emunah explains why we feel we exist through the whole process of Tzimtzum, but putting that aside, we exist because Hashem wants us to exist, but we don't exist because we are within our source at all times. We are never disconnected from our source, and that's why Ein Oid Milvadoi. Nothing else exists but Hashem himself. Now, just please remember, everybody, that this chapter, first of all, we're giving a summary. Second of all, these are very lofty concepts in Chassidus, which can be meditated upon for hours and hours, and we still won't understand them completely. And that's the point, that we don't understand. We don't understand. And when a person deeply reflects upon this, the Alter Rebbe tells us in this chapter, he will actually be filled with joy. Wow, why joy? Some people get confused. Oh, wow, this is just too confusing. Why would we be filled with joy? Because this is incredible. Because this faith that we have, that nothing else exists besides Hashem, and that this world is a dwelling place for Hashem, brings us to a level of intimacy and closeness with Hashem that is so amazing that this brings us to a level of joy. And this, at this point in the Perek, the Alter Rebbe says, one of the psukim that we teach children, V'zeh kol ha'adam v'tachlis b'yosov. This is every person and the purpose of his creation. Why are you created in this world? Kol ha'olamos, elyonim v'tachtonim, all the worlds, the higher worlds, the lower worlds, this is the purpose of their creation. Liyos loy dira zu b'tachtonim, to be a dwelling place for him in this lower realm. Because, without learning these concepts, we could make the mistake in thinking that we are separate from Hashem. We could make the mistake looking at this world full of concealment of godliness, we could make the mistake that Hashem is not here. But comes along the Alter Rebbe and tells us, no, nothing else exists besides Hashem. This world doesn't even exist. It's all godliness. And everything that Hashem wants is to live in this world. That's our purpose. The purpose of being created is to continuously reveal the fact that Hashem is in this world. Continuously reveal Hashem in this world. And this emunah achieves that Hashem is revealed in this world. And it's as if, the Alter Rebbe gives an example, it's as if a king has come to visit you in your home. Imagine you going to visit a king. That would bring you a certain level of happiness and joy. But imagine the king coming to your abode, your dwelling place, the king coming to your house and saying, I've come to stay for a while. Wouldn't that bring us amazing happiness and joy? All the more so, the King of Kings. So contemplating on this oneness of Hashem, and there's lots more in Tanya that teaches us how to contemplate on this, can bring us to a state of amazing joy, that we, us lowly beings, clothed in bodies, living in the lowest worlds of creation, we are able to host Hashem. Hashem is here. Hashem is here in every single aspect of our lives, in every corner of the world. It is up to us to reveal Hashem because of this oneness of Hashem. Hashem's here, but our job is to reveal him. So we have to remember that Ein Od Milvadoi equals our mission to reveal him, to reveal Hashem. Now, where do we get this capacity to have such a faith? Because really it makes no sense, right? We actually get this ability to have this level of emunah from our patriarchs, from the Avos. It's not something that we work on. It's not something that we can produce. It's actually inherent in all of our beings, in every single Jew's spiritual, genetic makeup. We have the ability to have this faith that Hashem is everything is Hashem. In the same way as a person feels joy, let's say a person gets a tremendous windfall, a person inherits millions of dollars of a huge fortune, he obviously will be happy. In the same way, we rejoice in our inheritance that we get from our patriarchs in feeling this tremendous faith in Hashem, that Hashem ein od milvado, that there nothing else exists besides Hashem, and that it is up to us to reveal Hashem. In other words, when this lower world, the most low of the worlds, realizes Ein Od Milvado, it becomes a dwelling place from Hashem. And also, when one realizes this oneness, this knowledge of Hashem's oneness, when one contemplates on it and becomes one with you, not just some information floating around, it also helps us to overcome any obstacles which stand in our way in fulfilling the mitzvahs. Because how can there be an obstacle to fulfill the mitzvah because nothing else exists besides Hashem? So how can anything stand in the way of Hashem's will? Now, this chapter actually ends off in the most profound way. So here we are in the chapter feeling an intimate connection with Hashem because Hashem is basically living in our homes, right? In our home. So we feel this tremendous joy because of this connection. And then the Alter Rebbe says, you think you're feeling joy? There's a double joy. There's an even greater joy than that. And you know what the greater joy than that is? An additional level to this joy when you realize the pleasure that your faith is giving to Hashem. So now, not only do we feel pleasure because of the faith that we have and of the fact that Hashem is dwelling in our domain, but we feel a double pleasure as a result of the pleasure that we give to Hashem, that our emunah brings to Hashem. Because when a Jew has faith in God, that is truly how we can subdue the darkness, the sitra achra. and we can turn the darkness into light. And turning darkness into light is what gives Hashem tremendous pleasure. So every time you reveal godliness in this world, be it by doing a mitzvah, be it by learning Torah, be it by overcoming your will and doing the will of Hashem, those are ways of revealing Hashem in this world. Not only by contemplating, but also by doing. Every time we do that, we bring tremendous joy to Hashem, because we have transformed darkness into light. And that is the whole purpose of creation. The whole purpose of creation, if the whole purpose of creation is to make this world into a dwelling place for Hashem, that will be completely fulfilled when Mashiach comes, when there will be no vestige of darkness in this world. It will be completely light. And it will be a light that comes as a result of the darkness. If you remember correctly, we spoke about this previously in chapters of Tanya, that light is very nice, but light that comes as a result of the darkness is even a greater light, and even has a greater advantage over light that just exists, right? And that brings us to the last pasuk of the 12 psukim, and this is how this chapter ends, and it is so beautiful. I never actually really contemplated it until I really read it when I was preparing this chapter, which is, and I'm going to actually take the English translation to translate it well, Yismach Yisrael ba'osav, let Bnei Yisrael, let the nation of Israel rejoice in its maker. Let us, in other words, let us be happy in the joy of Hashem, right? Pirush, what is the explanation? The explanation is, whoever is of the seed of Israel ought to rejoice in the joy of God. Shekol mi shehu mizera Yisrael, yesh lo lesmoyach besimchas Hashem. He ought to rejoice in the joy of Hashem. Asher sos v'sameach. Hashem is happy and joyous, b'dirasei b'tachtonim, with his abode amongst the creatures of the lower spheres. And that is one of the 12 psukim that we teach children. So yes, what is the explanation? How do we get, what is the whole purpose of this chapter? How do we reach a level of true joy? So firstly, by contemplating Hashem's unity, and by realizing that Hashem dwells among us, and by realizing that it is our purpose to reveal Hashem, that there is nothing else besides Hashem, that we reveal Hashem. And as a result, Yismach Hashem ba'osav. So the meaning of the words that Yismach Yisrael ba'osav, sorry, that a Jew rejoices with his creator. But ba'osav means his creator, but it also has the same letters of the word Asiya, which refers to our world in which we live, the world of Asiya. So we are not sad that we live in the world of Asiya, the world of greatest concealment of Hashem. On the contrary, we are happy. We are happy in Hashem's joy, because he is happy to be revealed here in this world, which will completely happen when Mashiach comes, hopefully very, very soon. But I just think that's such a beautiful ending to the chapter of Tanya. And Sina, I'm not sure if you have any more questions about the first example. I didn't get back to you.
No, just we are not sad that we live in the world of Asiya. I missed the rest.
On the contrary, we are so happy, because you could get caught up. You see, we could get caught up in this world, and we could think, boy, Hashem is concealed. Where's Hashem? Look at this happening. Look at this happening in my private life, in the world, in the world at large. But no, Hashem is here everywhere. It's all Hashem. Ein od milvado. It's all godliness, and it is up to us to reveal it. So we're very happy in Hashem's happiness in being revealed in this world. We're happy for our realization, first of all, our faith in Hashem, that Ein od milvado, and we're also happy in Hashem's happiness in being revealed, in being invited into our world, into feeling at home in our world. We're happy for Hashem's happiness. That's this pasuk. This pasuk is so beautiful. It's like, I'm going to repeat it because I just think it's so beautiful. Yismach Yisrael ba'osav. Let Bnei Yisrael rejoice in its creator. Pirush, What is the explanation of this? Kol mi shahu mizera Yisrael, whoever is of the seed of Israel, yesh lo lismayach besimchas Hashem, ought to rejoice in the joy of Hashem. Asher sus v'sameach b'dirasei b'tachtonim, who is happy and joyous with his abode amongst the creatures of the lower spheres. I think that's beautiful. Hashem is happy to be here. And it's up to us to reveal him.
Thank you.
Any questions? Observations? It's good to be back. Okay, did everyone like understand the concepts? I just want to make sure that these are very lofty concepts, which Tanya explains at length further on. So it's a little bit like, dipping your toe into the water.
Okay, so
when you explain it so well, no questions. Okay, maybe
Okay.
we do. Go ahead.
Sina, you wanted to say something?
just saying, so you, at the end, you said two things to, like, in summary, in short,
Mhm.
how to reach a level of true joy. One, when we contemplate Hashem's unity and our purpose, that to reveal Hashem, that's one big concept, the first part, right? And the second, that we rejoice with our creator. We're not sad that we live in the world of Asiya. And on the contrary, we're so happy even in this concealment, because it's all godliness, and we're happy for Hashem's happiness that we're trying to reveal him.
Yeah, we do reveal him.
Yeah. By mitzvahs and learning Torah.
Yes, that's the purpose. Today, the buzzword is purpose. Everyone's looking for purpose. Well, guess what? Our purpose, this is our purpose, to create a dwelling place for Hashem. However you do that, that's your purpose.
But Stina was saying by learning and davening, but even something plain, you come home and there's a tense situation, or people are just down for no reason. Even just uplifting and saying, doing something fun, or coming in with a smile, or putting on a song, that is a way of bringing light into darkness. That is also a way of feeling Hashem, bring him into the world.
Yes.
Yeah.
Because sadness conceals Hashem. Sadness comes from Klippa.
Right. As Hasidim who try harder and harder to do the right thing, we forget that joy is such an important, don't forget, in everyday life, that is so, so important. I try to tell my adult kids sometimes, like, Hashem gave you a present of this beautiful world. If you don't enjoy it, it's like saying, no, Hashem, thanks, but yeah, I don't like your present so much. You have to really enjoy and be happy in this world to show Hashem how good we are for his present.
But here's the thing, Nomi. I love what you said, because here's the thing, and this chapter, and many chapters in Tanya start this way, that one has to contemplate, one has to meditate, one has to reflect. In other words, these feelings are not automatic to us.
Right.
Our default setting is to kvetch and be sad and to look at the negative and right? That's our default setting. In order to when we live intentionally, that means we intentionally think about these things. We can start off our day thinking, Ein od milvadoi. We can start off our day saying, okay, today I am going to do my best to reveal Hashem. How am I going to reveal Hashem today? I'm not just going to automatically go about my day. And by the way, P.S. people, not in this chapter of Tanya, but this month is a great time to do this, because Hashem is in the field, right? Hashem's literally in our homes, literally, like very close to us. So it's easier. This month we have a lot of siyata d'shmaya, a lot of help from Hashem in order to reach this level. But we have to go out. You know how the mashal of the melech basada, of the king in the field, the one part of the mashal is that you have to go out of your home to greet the king in the field, right? So you got to just take that first step. But once you're out there, Hashem's there all the way for you, all the way in this world, helping you. And Hashem is so happy that you reach out. Hashem is so happy that you've taken that first step. And that's where our happiness comes. And Alter Rebbe says it's even a greater happiness than your own happiness in the unity of Hashem. When we're happy about Hashem's happiness, it's a quadruple happiness.
Chana, I'm sorry, you guys. I hope you just indulge me a second. I really have to tell you about something that happened yesterday. That's exactly what you were saying about taking that one step. I have a dear friend who, since COVID, she was living in assisted living or place, whatever. They shut them down so much that for about a year, she couldn't go out. Nobody could come in. She couldn't see her kids. She couldn't, nothing. Okay. And since that time, she has not left her room except to go to doctor's appointments because now she doesn't want to leave her room. This was a very vibrant woman. I studied with her for many years. We took walks together. She completely shut down. She was just like, she couldn't walk out her door unless she had to go to the doctor. And I kept encouraging her and telling her just one step. Finally, yesterday, I said, you know what, Annie, I'm coming. And we're going down to the dining room together. And I'm going to come with you. And we're going to take the step together. Okay, but I have to get dressed. I said, yes, you do. Okay, so I came. We walked down. She was so happy. She sat there. People were saying, oh, Annie, we haven't seen you. We haven't seen you. She had such joy. And people had such joy to see her. And afterwards, she said to me, she goes, this was so hard, but I really love you. You gave me so much happiness that you came and you took the step with me. So it's such a parable for, we have to just take that step. And sometimes somebody in our lives needs us to take their hand and take the step with them. Just to walk out the door, so it was just I was so filled with joy for her joy that she felt like she was connected again with the world,
So imagine Hashem, imagine Hashem, right?
We
are Hashem's connectors to this world. We reveal, Hashem is always connected. I'm not saying that Hashem is not connected, but we reveal Hashem in this world. So imagine Hashem's joy in being revealed in this world. It's even greater than our own joy in realizing that Hashem is everywhere. Isn't that amazing?
Yeah, it really just like now I get it, and I feel it in a different way. Thank you. Thank you, everybody, for listening. I appreciate it.
That's a great example. A great example, Sina. Thank you. Okay, so lots to contemplate upon, reflect upon this week. I'm gonna just stop the recording.